Katie Pavlich, editor of townhall.com and a Fox News contributor, and Hogan Gidley, former White House deputy press secretary. Hogan, let me start with you. When are we going to hear from the White House about what happened up north?
Well, look, in these times, there are a lot of questions, more so than answers. People are trying to get information. They're trying to make sure that when they do convey that to the American people, it's accurate, it's truthful. We've seen a real problem with that coming from this White House on a whole host of topics. This one they need to get right. People are heading out for Thanksgiving. People are at airports. They're on airplanes. They're trying to get across the southern border, the northern border. They're trying to mobilize and move throughout the rest of this country. And they need facts. They need honesty. They need truth. What you don't want to hear is it's no big deal. Don't worry about it. If, in fact, it does turn out to be terrorism, the White House needs to level with us and let the American people know what's at stake, what we're fighting against here. The real problem here, and I hate to go into this posture at this point, but it's because we have so many people coming across the southern and northern borders that there are so many concerns across this country. That's why Joe Biden is failing so miserably at the southern border. It's why the American people are concerned about his leadership because they understand, quite frankly, it's not by accident. This is by design.
And Katie, it's one word that I think of is credibility. When the Secretary of Transportation, Buttigieg, comes out and makes a statement about what's happening with travel, with Thanksgiving Day travel, when you consider what's happening up north with this border explosion, are people going to believe him? Are people going to trust what he says?
Well, look, the number one job of the commander-in-chief, which is President Joe Biden, is to keep the American people safe. Now, it's looking more like this situation was not a terrorist attack, and that would be a very good thing. But that doesn't erase the fact that there are very serious threats this country faces, and this administration has opened the southern border. There are hundreds of known terrorists, also terrorists on the watch list that have been caught at the border. There have been millions of people who have gotten away. There are millions of people who have been released onto the streets of American communities with no background checks and no information about where they came from, other than they came from countries like Yemen, countries that have terrorist hotspots all over the world. And when you talk to Border Patrol agents who are working in Arizona and Texas, they are highly alarmed at what they are being asked to do every single day to release these unknown people into American communities without knowing who they are. Most of them are adult single males, and they don't know what their intentions are. It's pretty easy, if you have common sense, to understand that that is a threat to Americans, and that's something that this administration has just brushed off and actually lied to the American people by saying the border is secure, and they act like catching a couple hundred people on the terrorist watch list is a success, rather than saying we're going to do everything we can to prevent that from happening again.
And of course, Hogan, a lot of Americans are looking at or thinking back to the Afghanistan withdrawal, where our commander-in-chief did not listen to his military advisors telling him to not give up the Bagram air base and a lot of other things that he didn't do. He thought he could do on his own. Again, the question of credibility. Are we in a situation where we might have an emergency and we don't have a commander-in-chief we trust?
Yeah, remember, though, it wasn't that he didn't just listen to them. He lied about it and said he never got that advice at all. That's not what they said. Only later did we find out he was told he shouldn't do it the way he was going to do it, but he was hell-bent on that withdrawal. And you take a look back at the polls, that's when Joe Biden's popularity, the anger with his policy, it started to really show in all the poll numbers, because the truth matters to the American people. And you're absolutely right. It's transparency, a lack of it from this administration, even though they claim to be the most transparent. There's no accountability with this administration, even though they get caught in lies time after time. And of course, the American people are suffering because of those policies. Katie pointed out, they pretend as though these things aren't happening, but in fact, they are, and they're happening because of Joe Biden and his policies. The American people see that. They're upset. They're frustrated. That's why you see people like Donald Trump ahead of Joe Biden in a head-to-head matchup for president of the United States, because this is what we feel out here. And the White House is trying to say, no, if we just spin it better, the American people won't feel as angry. They won't feel the brunt of these economic burdens that we've placed on them. But no amount of spin can fix what the American people know in their hearts, know with their pocketbooks, and feel every single day that has been caused by this administration.
And Katie, finally, we used to have this expression, the loyal opposition. There was a certain respect for the other side as much as they would fight And politics has never been beanbag. It's serious stuff, but there was a loyal opposition. Nowadays, I don't know if we have that soundbite from Joe Scarborough, but yeah, we do. Let me just play that soundbite from Joe Scarborough talking about Trump. Roll tape.
He will imprison, he will execute whoever he's allowed to imprison, execute, drive from the country. Just look at his past. It's not really hard to read. The only thing that stood between him and the destruction of American democracy was the federal judiciary.
All right. Well, we basically run out of time, Katie, but what is your reaction to that, and particularly when you think of what used to be called the loyal opposition?
Yeah, it's completely unhinged. They're panicking because Trump is beating Biden in a lot of these polls on issues that matter to every American. And finally, it's projection. The left under Barack Obama, or under President Joe Biden, Barack Obama did it as well when he was vice president, are using the Justice Department to go after parents and families. They're weaponize the government against their political opponents. It's pure projection to say that it's Trump who's going to do those things when quite literally the Department of Justice is doing it right now.
Katie Hogan, great stuff. Thank you so much for being here. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving.